Welcome to this edition of the Winning Pitch Podcast. My purpose for doing these podcasts is to give you personal stories from people who are successful in their own right, and you can listen to their stories, and maybe it will initiate something in your life so that you become more successful or change your goals or however you want to do that. Today's guest is Shawn Channell. I want you to avoid the desire to pronounce it Channell because that's not his right name. And Shawn, it's your floor. Take it.
Thank you, Thomas. Thank you for the introduction. I have to admit to everybody that probably the biggest qualification that I have for being in front of you guys is not based on the success I've had as both a sales trainer, as a salesperson. It's really based on the number of times that I have failed. If we want to talk about all the things that don't work, we'd probably need a lot more time than just this episode. See, I knew at an early age that I wanted to get into business without having really any specific focus on what that meant. So at 19, I started my first business, and it was focused on advertising for other small businesses. And frankly, it didn't take long for that business to fail. And the reason was because I wasn't good at selling my idea to other people. So after that failed, I went into real estate, and I wasn't good at that either. I sold a couple of houses, but I was barely making enough money just to cover the expenses of advertising and, open houses, etc. So I just still hadn't figured out how to sell stuff. So I tried a brief stint selling cars. Apparently I'm a slow learner. And it didn't take long for the dealership to figure out that I wasn't good at that either. So they stuck me on like the low end used car lot with, the cars that were like $2,000. In fact, the only good deal I had during that whole stint was a vehicle that I sold to my aunt. I thought I was giving her a good deal at the time until I saw my commission check and saw how much money we actually made. Obviously I didn't tell her that after the fact. There was no point in causing drama in the family, but I just couldn't figure out how to sell. So, after several years and several failed attempts, my father asked me to go back to college. So I went and got a degree in economics. And as soon as I was done, I went right back into car sales. I was a little bit better, but I still wasn't good. And I think what I didn't realize at the time is I wasn't doing things in the right order. I was really focused on my goals and my products and my services. So that failed. I went into door-to-door sales, 2.5 years of doing door-to-door, business to business, house to house. Really, probably the best thing I learned at that time was how to deal with rejection. Over 2.5 years, there was 65,000 no's. So you combine that with like my dating life, and I've had my share and your share of rejection, enough to last a couple lifetimes. So I ended up moving into technology sales, and that's where things started to click for me. And I started acquiring clients just at this really rapid pace. And so I just kept refining what I was doing. And within 6 months, I had, 40, 50 clients that I just acquired through cold calling. I was selling hundreds of thousands of dollars in technology, computer hardware, and software. And I started winning awards and making more money than I'd ever made. And so I did that for a couple of years at just a breakneck pace. And they finally asked me to step into a sales leadership role and work with other new people to help them do what I was doing. And frankly, I sucked at that. I still feel bad.
Why did I know where you were going with that? Remember the old Peter principle?
Yeah.
Promote a guy who's no good anymore and then fire him.
Right? Well, it's a different game. Being good at sales does not mean you're good at sales leadership. Yeah. And I still feel sorry for those first couple teams. A couple of those guys I've managed to make it work and click for, but for the most part, I just let them down. But I did figure it out eventually. In fact, I got so good at it, they asked me to then train other sales leaders how to do what I was doing. And so, for the past 15 years or so, I've been working with salespeople and sales leaders to really help them perfect their art and grow their business. So, it's been an interesting journey. I almost didn't take the first sales leadership role, mostly because I was making too much money and it was a pay cut.
Mm-hmm.
But what really kind of drove me to take that next step was I thought back to what it was like when I was doing door to door. And when I was doing door to door, there was 7 of us living in this house, and it was a rundown part of town. We were on the end of a dead end street. All the time we had cars parked in front of the house doing all sorts of illicit and illegal activities. There was rats the size of chihuahuas living in the walls. At night, you'd hear them running around looking for food. We could all, between 7 of us living in this house, and it was a 3-bedroom house, we could barely scrape together enough money to pay rent. Every single person in there was a failed salesperson. So what I figured out was, what I came back to was, as I was learning and figuring it out, I was trying to share that with them, but I didn't really know how. And so when I got asked to step in that sales leadership role a couple of years later, I'd moved out and was, living a better life, but I knew I owed it to them and, that myself for the 10 years I failed to try and pass that on to other people. The journey, the mission was never going to be about becoming a trainer for salespeople. It was just to get into business, but failing for so many years and then wanting to keep other people from failing, I felt compelled to share what I had learned with other people. And that's what I do today. Okay.
So when you went from being a really crappy salesman to becoming a good salesman, what did you do as far as training or reading, or what helped you overcome that inability to sell?
So yeah, there was a lot of books, a lot of books that are still widely used and widely available. There was training sales. I worked for a real estate agent. They sent me to a sales course. Both car dealerships sent me to sales courses. I read The Challenger Sale, and I read Spin Selling, and probably a dozen other sales books. I think the reason that none of those things work for me is I'm naturally an introvert. I didn't grow up being outspoken or outgoing. I had a hard time making friends. I had the confidence of a baby bird who didn't know he could fly. Mm-hmm. And so every time I tried to launch myself out of the nest, I just fell.
Got it.
What I think changed that for me was desperation and really trying all the things that I had, the opposite of everything I'd learned. This doesn't work for me. Well, what if I try, something radically different? And through all those little tweaks is where I started to find my own sales methodology, which is what I train today.
So it's a kind of a mixing pot of various different things, or is it based primarily on experience, finding out what hurts when you get a no?
I would say there's absolutely things that I was influenced by, right? But yeah, there's very much a factor in there of these are the things that didn't work for me, so here's something else, until I just narrowed down something that I could consistently see success at and then consistently teach others to have success at. So and it's something I still refine today.
Can you tell us what you found when you went from being a lousy salesman? What was the first couple of lessons that you learned and you started to apply?
Yeah. And this is going to be a little ironic given the name of your show. One of the first things I found that didn't work for me was the traditional elevator pitch.
Okay.
And you've been in business a long time. I'm guessing that you have given your spiel to clients who, shortly after or immediately after, even during that pitch, told you, no, thanks, we're not interested.
Yep.
And you knew in the back of your head or in the front of your head or somewhere in your bones that they had a need for your product or service, but something that you said just didn't connect with them.
Okay.
Whether it's one word, and people will say no because of you said the one word that was wrong. People will say no because they don't realize they have a need for your product or service. One of the examples I'll use when I'm training is, my wife is a good driver, and oftentimes she's on the road for her own business, and being the good husband I am, I was out helping her not too long ago load up stuff in the trunk. Okay. And so I was putting stuff in the trunk, and one of the books that I was packing for her dropped down to the ground. And I bent down to pick it up and realized that the tires on her car, the tread was gone. In fact, it was so bad that, you could start to see the threads showing through. And she was getting ready to go on about a 250-mile drive. So, had she taken that drive, probably would have ended up on the side of the road with a blown out tire.
Right.
Well, if someone had said to her the day before, hey, do you need new tires? Her answer would have been no. Because even though she had the need for the tires, she didn't realize she had the need for the tires.
Right.
And so once I pointed that out to her, then she knew that she had a tire, and we got it fixed before she took her trip. But oftentimes in sales, we're talking to people who have a need, and it can be a pretty drastic need, but they don't quite realize they have that need. Right?
Got it.
My wife does have a heavy foot, so it is possible that she burned through that tire in a day or two, but most likely
I'm married to one of those too. She's original hot rodder.
She probably needed tires a month before that. But if, the guy from the local tire shop came to us, she would have said no thanks. And so for me, getting away from that traditional elevator pitch made a big difference. In some cases, I wouldn't say I refuse to pitch people, but I'll certainly stop people and say, look, before I waste your time and waste my time, right, can I just ask you a couple of specifics about your business? Right? If there's no need, then why go through even 30 seconds of conversation when let's just find out whether we might even match up.
Okay. Awesome. So what else did you discover during that transition?
That most people care very little about myself, my company, my product, my services.
Exactly.
What most people care about most is their company, their challenges, their goals, their needs, their wants, their vision, their, pain points, all of those things. And if I don't understand those things and help them understand, help them feel like I'm really there to help them accomplish a goal or solve a challenge, then we're probably not going to make it far enough down the conversation to come to some kind of agreement that we can work together. So by going at the conversation focused on...
How do you get that information? Go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh, yeah. Fair question. How do I get to that information? It's really asking questions, and it's, asking the right questions. So, the name of our training program is strategic communication, and it's really about going into every conversation and not just sales, but going into every conversation with a focus and a plan on how you start that conversation and get it to where you want to end up. And, some of that's suggestive. Some of that's just purely, asking questions to understand. But if you know your business and you have a sense of your client's business, you can probably ask the right set of questions to help them come up with the idea that, hey, we have this challenge, we have this goal, we have this want, we have this desire, we have this need, and it's a pretty big deal. So we want to solve it. And once they get to that spot where we want to solve this problem, that's when I start talking about how I can help them. And quite honestly, in some cases, I can't help them. And I would much rather say, I'm not the right fit for you, at least not right now, than try to sell them or convince them just buy my product or service when it's not what they need.
I completely understand. My other business is the aviation tax business in California, and There are some people that by the time they call me, they owe the tax. There's nothing that can be done about it. You know what I always do? I said, I'll take complete responsibility for having such an ineffective marketing program that you didn't know about me beforehand to call me, because I could have helped you. And, that disarms people a little bit because they're not used to hearing that. But I actually feel that way because I would have liked the extra client. I would have liked him not to unjustly enrich the Socialist Republic of California anymore. And, I would have liked to fix it. And if I had a time machine to go back, I'd have promoted even more. And I also know instinctively that I probably would have missed him anyway, because I don't really know what he was looking at while he was thinking about needing that product. To make your point, I'm not even sure he knew he needed it.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of people don't. And I love your approach, Thomas. In fact, that's one of the things that I think helped me was the apology. One of the ways that at some point in most processes along the way, the customer will say, I got to think about it, or I'm not sure if this is right for me, or, I got to talk to my spouse or my partner. And one of the first things I always do is I apologize. Because if you need to think about it, if you're unsure, if you have any doubts or questions or any hesitation at all, I did not do a good job. Right? That means I failed you as my potential customer, partner, client, because I didn't explain how we could add that value and help you. Right? At the end of the day, if our businesses aren't helping people, then we won't be around.
Yeah,
and,
we will.
So I love that approach that you just apologize, because one, like you said, it's completely disarming, but it's genuine. It's real, because if we do what we're supposed to do, our clients won't have waited too long, and they won't feel like they need to think it over or any of these things. That's on us to help them realize that they have a resource that can help them avoid these challenges. So I love that approach.
I think instinctively, that's always been my approach to everything, because it's like, at one time I was sending out 1 million to 1.5 million emails a month. I've done 100,000, 120,000 social posts a month. We make 3,000 phone calls a week. I know that if I keep pushing stuff out there, and stuff being any different channel that you want to use, that I'm going to get some return flow. And it always surprises me when somebody says they don't know about me, because historically, I know that most emails are not read. Most of the time you're making phone calls, you're leaving messages most of the time. But damn it, I feel like I'm screaming as loud as I can through every device I've got. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But I really genuinely wished that everyone knew about me and my service before they bought an airplane, a vessel, or a vehicle in California, because I know from experience that I've never failed. I've done over 1,700 of these cases, and not one of my clients has ever paid a dime in tax. So I have that, damn, where do I find them? And I've just recently hired some people who say they're experts, and we're gonna figure that out. And probably what they're gonna do is sit down and ask me a lot of questions until I tell them what I already know, but I'm too stupid to recognize it yet. So that's my answer to everything is promote. And I don't know any other way of doing it. And that's just kind of, it's an innate in me, and I really don't know where that came from. I've always done it that way.
Well, and if you look at the top people in any industry, they're good at self-promoting. Right? In fact, it's one of the challenges that I've found in training salespeople is, we're taught at a very early age to not self-promote, to not brag, and to be humble and not, stand out and all of these things. And so that's one of the things that you really have to do to be a successful marketer, a successful business owner, a successful salesperson, is you have to be comfortable with self-promoting. And it's really a habit a lot of people have to work to change. And so it's probably one of the reasons for your own success is that you're comfortable in that role, because it's really a success factor that if you don't have, you're never going to get to that level where people on a mass level understand the value that you bring.
You know, and now that you say that, I'm thinking about it, and I do know exactly where it came from. I went to 17 different schools before I got out of high school. So I knew one thing: make friends fast, they're not going to be around long. So that's probably has a little bit to do with it. And no, my dad wasn't in the military. He was a project manager for a construction company. And I was also raised Catholic, and we'd moved to a new town, and I couldn't get into the Catholic school. So I'd start in a public school, and then as soon as there was an opening, then he'd move me to Catholic school. So it wasn't unusual for me to go to 2 or 3 schools a year. And the cool part about that was I learned how to be a glib student. I realized how to get good grades without learning anything, which are all bad lessons, not necessarily good lessons. And I applied them in college. I created a goal one day. Let me see if I can get an A in this math class, never turn any homework, and never do any tests. And I accomplished it. And I won't tell you how, because I don't want to pass that lesson on to others. But, you know, it's just, I've always been able to figure out how to get around things or how to make things just work. But it's a strength as well as a weakness, because I'm not creating any, you know, long-term value. I'm not creating any lasting relationships. And, you know, I'm a survivor. I came from a family of 10, and you know, if you didn't finish first, you never didn't get any seconds, and all of those kinds of things. But I'm thinking about, because of what we're talking about, I'm thinking about, why am I this loon about promotion? And you know, I've never been someone who, I was never one of the cool guys when I was in school, because I was never long enough to be a cool guy.
Yeah.
And when I got into high school, yeah, I went to the same high school every year, except for I got to my senior year because I got kicked out of the Catholic school I was in because I got married, because my girlfriend was pregnant. See how the trickle down theory works? You know, you just keep going forward, keep going for it. Just never, ever give up. And you're not really a failure until you give up. And so I just know lots of ways not to do things. I know less than ideal ways to do things. And as I've gotten a little bit older, I try not to duplicate any of those processes, but it's real easy because it's kind of natural. My first inclination, well, why don't I just do it this way? I can figure this all out. But it's not an ethical way to do things most of the time, so I don't. That's probably the biggest thing I've learned.
Well, and you probably, you know, to your point, there's lots of different ways to come up with the right answer, right? You know, whether we look at, you know, any of the, you know, sales or any aspect of life. In fact, I think one of the challenges that we see in today's society is we all believe that our way is the right way. And
it's kind of like religion.
Very much, right? You know, everyone believes that their way is the only way, when reality is there's lots of ways to get to the you know, answer, to get to solve the challenge, to solve the problem, to move forward. And I think that while there's lessons that we can pass along and share, there's also a uniqueness to each one of our experiences. And so, you know, knowing lots of ways to not do stuff, as well as maybe the easiest way to do some things, right? But if that works for you, then that's probably right for you. And I shouldn't hold that in judgment. You know, whether, you know, at the end of the day, if someone else is at a higher level has to pass that judgment along, well, that's between you and them. It's certainly not on my shoulders. Mm-hmm. But I think the more that we realize that as individuals, that helps us move forward. And I think the more that we realize that as a society, I think that helps us all point, you know, that brings us together and helps us move in a collective direction versus my way is the only way.
Well, I certainly know that's not true. I spent 4 decades as a high school baseball coach, and I would go to these conventions and I'd learn ways that other coaches do things. And somebody asked me after I was probably halfway through my career, "You're a successful coach. Why do you keep going there?" I said, "I need to know a lot of things." Why? Because every kid has a unique problem. And all I do is I keep making adjustments till I find the one that he connects with in his mind and is willing to do. And then I can help him be a success. As long as I don't continue to learn things, I'm eventually going to run out of answers for him. And that will make me a bad coach. And that's the way he'll remember me. And I don't want kids to remember me that way.
Yeah. Well, and that says a lot about you. One, that you believe in being a student. And good students typically make the best teachers. Two, that you obviously have this drive to be good at what you do, and that's something that you're probably passing along to those kids as well, is that there's lots of different ways to do this, but I'm going to continue to perfect my craft no matter how long I've been in this game. So that's some great stuff that you probably shared with a lot of kids.
So walk me through your process. Treat me like a new prospect, okay? And how are you going to interest me in your service? And then once I've engaged you, what can I expect to happen?
Yeah. So again, we focus on sales training, leadership development. I even help some companies build their sales organizations from the ground up.
Okay.
But if we're having our first meeting, our first conversation, chances are you're going to have a little bit of knowledge about what I do and why we're talking, right? Whether that's a phone call, whether that's a face-to-face Zoom call these days.
Yeah. This is the best we could do, folks.
Yeah. And I think we've all had those clients that are like, you've got 3 minutes, or you've got 5 minutes, or, just tell me what it is you do and we'll see if we need you. And again, what I say is my company does what most companies don't when it comes to sales. We fix a lot of the problems that traditional sales methodologies have, but it's not for everybody. So instead of taking you down this road and trying to figure out whether it's a good fit for you, are you okay if I just ask you a couple specifics about your business?
Okay. So ask me. Ask
Okay.
me your typical set of questions, and I'll come up with some good answers for you.
Yeah. So how many salespeople do you guys currently employ?
I'm the primary one, and I have 2 other people that are typically in training.
Typically in training?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So do you do the training, or does somebody else do the training?
I have everyone on Cardone U because I believe in Grant Cardone's training segments, and up until 2016 for the previous 30 years, I just thought I knew it all and did it my way, and do it my way or you're fired type of stuff.
Okay. Are your salespeople typically very tenured in sales, or are they typically newer?
No, I have found that because I have such a unique product or service, and I'm answering your questions from the viewpoint of my tax business,
yeah,
that I can't find someone who knows enough about what our service is that they already know. So I always have to hire people that are going to have to be willing to be trained.
Okay. And so what's the average tenure of one of your salespeople?
Great question. I've never thought about it. Probably 6 or 8 months, because they get frustrated because it's hard to learn how to do what we do.
Okay. So given that you're constantly having to train new salespeople, and you're using Grant's methodology, which you said works for you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Have you ever looked at alternative methods that maybe might fit more in line with a brand new salesperson?
That's why I'm talking to you.
Fair enough. How much does it impact you financially to have to constantly spend time training and going through and working with brand new salespeople all the time?
That's a hard question to answer because, first place, I love training because I'm naturally someone who likes to engage with people and coach them or teach them. But it's pretty much a pain in the ass. It takes a long time because when you're dealing in an arena like I am, where I do sales tax stuff, legal stuff, it's experience points. And while I have years and years and years of experience, so when somebody asks me a unique question or starts to give me some part of their story, uh, I kind of know where to go, and it's hard to train someone without giving them the experience. And I haven't really figured out how to document that kind of experience.
Yeah. And you're in the same boat, I think, as a lot of business owners, right? You know
Okay.
your business, right? You've perfected how to sell it to others, but now you're trying to replicate that.
Yeah.
Um, Now, you obviously wear many hats as the owner. Um, I mean, how much time do you think you're, I don't say wasting, but spending training people when you could either be doing other facets of your business or selling yourself?
Probably 3 to 4 hours a day.
How much money do you think that costs you?
A couple $100,000.
So if you could get someone else to train your sales people with a repeatable, workable sales methodology and for a fraction of that cost, wouldn't that make sense?
Yep.
So would you be interested in how we could help you?
Absolutely. Keep talking. I haven't hung up on you yet.
So in a nutshell, that is part of the way that we go through and coach and work our people, right? To continue down the path, really, now this is where I would talk about our brand, our methodology, right? And the nice thing is, when I'm working with clients, typically I use my own methodology. So I'm able to help them understand how we get to that conversation. Essentially,
So what is your methodology?
so again, it's strategic communication. So there's three things that clients care about, or potential clients care about. One is, can you help me solve a problem, a challenge, right? And the other side of that, and this is where a lot of sales people don't focus on, is don't just focus on their challenges, their pain points. We've all been taught at some point in sales, what keeps you up at night? What are your pain points? There are a lot of companies that spend a lot of money, not because they have challenges, but they have goals. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Preferably, I want to work with the best of the best. And those companies have already figured out what their pain points are and solved them. Now they're trying to figure out how to get to the next level. Right?
Got it.
And they probably have more money and more opportunity for me than just focusing on the companies that are struggling.
Okay.
So part of the sales methodology and part of it is not just focus on your pain points, but your opportunity.
Yep.
Right? One of the other pieces is what I call the butterfly effect. And essentially what I did is I took you down a path where we talked about, I asked you some very simple questions, yes or no questions to start off with, either or questions, is it this or this, to get an understanding of where you're at in your company's sales organization. Based off of that, I saw potential challenges or opportunities based off your answers.
Okay.
Right? So all I did was I picked one, and I can come back and we can talk about some of the other ones. We could go down the same, different routes, right? But this is what we call the butterfly effect.
Easy for you to say.
Every, we all think of our businesses of, I need my salespeople to sell more. And most people stop there, right? What they don't think of is, what is the impact of their salespeople not selling more, right? So my goal was to walk you to the point where you went, wow, it's costing me hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to train my own salespeople.
Okay.
Right? Well, when you recognize and realize that you spend hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, when me and you start talking about how much I might charge to train your salespeople, you're gonna be like, well, yeah, that's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Because it's pennies on the dollar for what your time and effort is costing you. Whereas if I just jumped in and said, hey, we have the sales methodology, it's great, we got this training program, here's how much it cost, we're like, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I want to wait until we have an agreement that you have a need, right? And not only that you have a need, but you recognize how that need how big it is, what the impact of that need is across your business, and mostly how much it's costing you from a financial perspective. Right?
So by getting the potential client to come up with his own numbers, now you have something to compare it to,
Yeah.
context and contrast. So,
Yeah.
okay.
And it's not just limited to the numbers. We could talk about your own frustration. We could have gone down the frustration of you having to spend 3 or 4 hours a day to invest in somebody for 6 months, have them walk away, and then you have to start that process over. Right?
Well, that's why I gave you that little bit about I like coaching, so it doesn't bother me.
Yeah.
So that you wouldn't go there. So it wouldn't have made any difference to me. Even though from money standpoint, I understand, but I like communicating with people. I like teaching people. I like talking to people and finding out what their opinions are. Then I operate with people from the viewpoint that they know the answer to everything on the planet, in the universe. And if I just keep asking them questions, they'll eventually figure out that they know the answer. And that way I get them to own the answers. So it's kind of similar to the process that you use.
Yeah, it sounds very much so. And I think there's a lot of good salespeople that do it. I'm a huge Grant Cardone fan myself. We connected through the 10X challenge recently. I've been to the 10X Growth Con, subscriber to Cardone U, right? Big believer. I also believe though that Grant has this natural flair, natural ability, and that, he may not have always been as good as he is now, but I'm guessing he didn't suck quite that bad or for very long when he first got started. And I think
He had to get the money from someplace to buy those drugs, didn't he?
Yeah. And I think that's commonplace with a lot of people who have sales methodologies or who train sales, is that they were innately good at sales, right?
Okay.
Personality, maybe a combination of luck or the right, knowledge early on in their career. And so their method doesn't always work for people who are not salespeople.
Okay.
And if we're, really looking at sales in a whole, how many people that you're working with, this might be their first sales job, right? I didn't go to college to become a salesperson. There's very few people that grow up and go, I want to be in sales. Most of the time it becomes the job that you get because you can't get another job. And then you have to try and figure it out. Well, if it's not innately in you and you're trying to learn from someone who is very good at it naturally, it's hard for them to say, here's the 5 steps that I have to do every single time to go from point A to point Z.
So using a baseball analogy, Babe Ruth won't necessarily be able to teach people how to hit home runs.
Right? Yeah, he just does it. If you're just good at it, you don't necessarily have to think about why. Right? In fact, you're probably better off if you don't.
Yeah, that is real true.
You just do. Yeah. And so when they're forced to explain how they do it, you get things like, well, I just build relationships. What does that mean? Right? I was not good at building relationships. So I had to come up with actual steps, right? I mean, a list of questions that I could ask and when I should ask them and what is that path? Here's question A. And if they answer yes, I go to question C and then I go to question B, right? I had to figure out those paths and those steps because I was not good at it. And if you're innately good at it, you don't have to think through that process. So I think one of the reasons I've been able to help a lot of salespeople is because I'm good at sales now, but that's because I follow a strategic plan every time. It's not something that I just off the cuff, sounds differently every conversation. I make it up as I go. It is all very strategic in my approach. And I can at the very least give them a roadmap that they can choose to follow or not. But it gives them that foundation that then they can use and then build upon based off their own experiences, wins, failures, etc.
So tell me a little bit about your training company. How many employees are there in the company? Is it just you? Is it
me and my program manager?
So you do all the training yourself?
I do, yes.
All right. Tell me something else about your company that you don't want people to know.
Well, there's really not anything about my company I don't want people to know. I am in the process right now of creating our first online course.
Okay.
So we just started down that. We expect to have that online course up and running in the next, say, month.
What's it called?
It will be called Strategic Communication. We'll start with a mini course, so you can kind of get your feet wet and understand the methodology, take away some things that you can use in, again, not only your sales career, but your daily life. And from there, we'll offer a full course.
How are you constructing this course? Are you using YouTube or using Kajabi? Are you using your iPhone? How are you doing that?
We'll be using Kajabi.
Okay. Why did you pick Kajabi versus anything else?
Mostly because it's an all-in-one solution, right? It's something that I can not only host the content on, it can handle our email. We can create, sales funnels. We can build out the website from there. I have a website currently right now, and it's, just -launch.com. That's really been focused on the podcast that we have. This is really going to be more focused on the training and consulting business.
So give our viewers the website address for your training company. Do it right now.
That is not live yet, so I will not do that. You can find out about the training program through our podcast website, which is, again, just-launch.com.
Okay. All right. Okay. So if you could go back today to, I'm gonna ask you a tough question now. How old are you?
45.
So if you could go back to when you were 21, what would you tell your 21-year-old self?
Just keep going.
Just keep simple, huh?
Yeah. Here's the thing, Thomas. I had my 20s were rough. They were a lot of fun, but career-wise, not so promising. My 30s were, again, a lot of fun. On a personal, career-wise, they were good. Personal-wise, not so much.
Okay.
But in the last, 5 years, the amount of growth I've had, the amount of success I've had, the level of personal happiness I've had, have been amazing. And I'm in a really fulfilling position in my life with a lot of upside and a lot of good things coming ahead of myself. And I don't believe that I would be here if I went and altered the past.
All right. So what happened? What happened 6 years ago that created this 5 year ago event?
I hit rock bottom.
Okay.
I left a relationship of 12 years that hadn't been good for the last, 4 or 5, even though professionally I was doing okay. I fell apart. I started drinking more than I should have. I was in danger of messing up my career. It took a big toll on me emotionally and mentally to end up in a divorce, quite frankly. And that's was not something I'd ever saw for myself, or was not something I was proud of. But by reaching the lowest point I'd ever been, out of that, you really have two choices. Right? And I chose to learn the lessons, like I had in sales in my professional career, figure out what, it was that made me happy. What was it that I could have done, can do differently in my relationships. And I forged down that path and eventually found someone who, we align, I think, better as husband and wife. Mm-hmm. Our vision of what we want and business and all those things are very much in alignment. But I had to reach that low point to learn those lessons. And, again, that happened in my sales career, that happened in my professional life. And coming back from that, hopefully you learn. That's the biggest thing is
I remember the
mistakes.
best advice I ever got was, when you find yourself at the bottom of a hole, stop digging.
Yeah.
You know, I believe that everything around me in life, everything that's happened to me in life, that I caused it to happen. And when I'm complaining, who am I complaining to, or what am I complaining about? It's like standing in a mirror and say, God, you're ugly. Boy, though, you got pimples. You know, boy, you'd be a lot better looking if you just lose 100 pounds. All those kinds of things. And I used the analogy of stop digging a lot when I was a baseball coach, because I had a kid once tell me, Coach, why are you always criticizing me about exactly the same thing? And I said, because that's my job. I'm going to continue to criticize what you're not doing until you correct it. So if you don't correct it, you're going to hear it again tomorrow. And if you come back to the next 2 days and you don't correct it, I'm going to point it out to you again. That's my job. So, you know, I thank you for sharing with us. It might have been a little painful, but I think that the readers will find your story valuable. The one thing I forgot to give you an opportunity to do when I asked you about your website address, if you want to, not that I'd force you to do it, I just suggest it. If you want people to get in touch with you, what's your phone number?
Yeah. I take business calls all the time. It's out on my Facebook page. It's you can reach me out on the website with it. My phone number is 253-204-8704. So it's 253-204-8704.
And what city are you located in again?
Just outside of Seattle, Washington.
Got it. That's right. We were talking about sunshine a little bit earlier, right?
Yeah, or the
I
lack
forgot
of.
about- yeah, well, that's your definition. Yeah, I got it completely. So we're getting up close to being an hour. Do you have anything else that you want to say to the viewers? And remember that this is going to be available to all close to 8 billion people on the planet. What would you like to say to 8 billion people on the planet?
Yeah. One of the things that's kept me passionate about what I do is the impact that learning how to be good at my communication skills has had on the ripple effect across my life. You know, the reason I wasn't good at sales was because I was not effective at communication, right?
How'd you learn how to communicate better?
Learning what not to do mostly, right? And then, you know, again, really coming up with a strategic plan on, you know, does this work, and then trying it out until it worked. But once I figured out how to become a better communicator, that impacted all aspects of my life. It made me better at my relationships. It's made me better as a parent. It's made me better as a friend, as a business owner, and certainly as a salesperson. And I think so many people look at, you know, sales sometimes has a bad perception. And I think a lot of people don't like sales or don't like salespeople. And there's lots of reasons that are justifiable in that. But if you can learn how to effectively communicate with other people, then you will be rewarded with all sorts of greatness in your life. And that's really what keeps me going. Is it's not teaching someone how to sell, right? I mean, that's good because that helps them professionally. But almost to the person, when I help them become better at sales, I start to see that ripple effect it has on the other aspects of their life. Right? They're happier in their relationships. They're happier as parents. You know, they have better friendships. They're better employees. They're better students. They're better people. And I think if more of us invested into learning about how to become effective communicators and not be pushy salespeople, better communicators, we would not only enrich our own lives, but enrich the lives of those around us.
Okay, great. Have you read a book called Sell or Be Sold?
I have. The one on your shelf from Mr. Cardone.
Yeah, I recommend it to everybody because everything in life is a sales cycle. The commissions in life are getting a girlfriend, getting a wife, getting a boyfriend, getting a husband, having children, having a great life, making money so that you can donate to your church or any charitable cause that you think is important. So there's lots of kinds of commission. And my paraphrasing of what you just said is that everything in life is a sales cycle of some kind. You're trying to get people to do what influence people to in a particular course of direction is actually the correct definition there. But I appreciate you. Thank you very, very much for giving us this time. And in the last 60 seconds, if there's anything that you want to say it now or forever hold your peace.
I just want to say thank you for allowing me the opportunity to interact and have a conversation with you. It's been insightful to learn a little bit more about you. I'm thankful for the opportunity, and it's been interesting and fun, quite frankly, to listen to you share your process and thought process and backstory, and how much it aligns with some of the things that I've been trying to teach and to train for a number of years now. So it's good to build this connection with you.
Thank you, sir. So that is the end of today's podcast. And oh, by the way, Shawn, anytime that you want somebody to come onto your podcast, just ask me. We'll figure it out. I'll make time for you. I'd love to do it.
Absolutely.
So that's the end of today's version of the Winning Pitch podcast with Shawn Channell. I said it correctly.
You did.
You got his phone number, and we'll be on Spotify and iTunes, and please check it out. And so, Shawn, adios.